Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. Something in the way she moves me. Don't wanna leave her now. Don't wanna leave her how. So I was thinking about when I had go on a flight to summertime and went off to Mystic Seaport. Mystic Seaport is a tourist trap like out in downtown, like you go to Seaport Village. Basically the same thing. And Dallas is right here. My grandpa Dallas, who was from Georgia, that's when he was really young Marine, and he was a real disciplinarian, hardcore, hard-nosed guy. They call him a hard-nosed. He called Poppy Poppy. And this is his son Frank and Susan. They're Virginia pastors. And when I was young, I grew up with a bunch of lots of black people and a lot of ghetto-ness in my area. And eventually I had a bunch of issues with anorexia and I was recovering. And I would eat at Mystic Seaport, like soup, low calorie things like soup. They'd always get lots of seafood stuff. I still love lobster bisque, or which that's high calorie, but I would eat like different kinds of soups there, whatever broth soup with. I would eat bread and fill it with like the sugar-free jelly, like the regular old like fruit spread jelly. Yeah, I was dieting real hard, I remember, and I was just getting out of that, and I would do laps around their house, which is in Connecticut and Bethel. The houses are like old 1800s kind of houses. They're old, like they're real way back in the day. And Bethel High School, I've gone down. It looked like a concentration camp when we passed by. I remember my mom saw it and was when it was a new school when she first went there. And I had walked into a library and I read Sleeping with an Enemy with Julia Roberts. And I remember I pissed in my bed the first time I arrived. That's usually an indication that you're dealing with a lot of stress. And Grammy, when she was younger, was having marital issues with Dallas. And she didn't want a divorce. And back then, divorce was different. It was a big deal to divorce because, including that's a religious time, a lot of people were embarrassed to divorce, and she wanted to be there for my mom and her brothers because they were young at the time. And Dallas had a whole bunch of bombs and guns, shotguns, handguns. He was preparing for the next Third World War, and he had it all in his basement. And old houses have basements. And when I remember, he had an army cot down there, and he had all these pre-made bombs. And my Uncle Perry had to get rid of all that stuff when he passed away and make sure that no one got a hold of those things. But he was going senile and had signs all over his belongings on his military cap. And I had pissed right in my bed, I remember, overnight, the first night that I had just spent the night there. And Sister Gina's older than me, and she was wishing that Lori was there. They get along better. Her generation's the Muppet generation. We used to watch the Beatles in cartoon. I remember it was really creepy seeing the Beatles in cartoon. Even as a kid, I thought it was off. All that psychedelic cartoon stuff. My dad liked Alice Cooper on DVD, and he'd watch a bunch of weird off stuff like that. Or Joe Cocker and the Mad Dog and Angry Englishman, and of course Leon Russell, who's a Oklahoma organist. Like Dallas was an organist, and he was real into playing military music more. But he was real tall, real big, stocky guy, and played football and was a Marine and real rough. When things would fall on the floor, "That's a dead Indian." So he would talk that way, or "You don't give a damn about my property." He would talk that way, and all I could hear was Southern drawl. Like all I could think about is out in like Georgia, and he would mow the lawn with one of those little motor lawn things. One time he ran to the bushes, and me and Gina saw it, and it was kind of funny because he was real hard-headed, and Grammy would start dramas like, "Oh, he cares about those plants and the lawn more than he cares about me." And she had problems, paralyzed the waist down because she attempted suicide with his handgun. She got a hold of his handgun and was aiming to her heart, but she was shaking, so went off on her spine, and she was paralyzed the waist down. So she slept in my room before she got into a nursing home short while, and we took care of her. But she was very fragile, very sensitive. She was rural from a farm. She grew up in a farm, a real farm girl, country bunkin', milk farm people, real delicate lady. But Dallas was a hard nose and a disciplinarian. You talk to Frank, he'll tell you stories, but he liked to go fishing, and I do like seafood. There's really I got to know lobster more. I love lobster and lobster bisque, and going to the Scottish Fair. There's deer meat. I love deer, or it's mildly gamey, but it's expensive. Deer meat's very expensive. The Scottish Fair, which they are Scottish, Boyd clan, Uncle Perry, who's red, a lot of red in his hair, and they used to call Grammy Red when she was younger. My mom's blonde, and Christine was known as the sweetheart lady of high school with her blonde bomber friends like Jill and Debbie Cook, who are all blonde, and they smoked Marlboro cigarettes. Marlboro cigarettes were the biggest thing in the 70s, and going to, they like to talk in their groups, their cliques, and very cliquish. Scars were in at the time, and rock and roll bands like Rolling Stones were extreme. And Elton John was a top in 1975. Elton John went huge, and he played with Leon Russell. And Grandpa had bought a piano and sent it over to us from Connecticut. And I had bought a keyboard. I would play a keyboard when I was homeschooled last year at high school, but that was just the beginnings of everything in my health. I was on medication in the mental hospital, and I got all messed up with depression myself. I took photography first and started shadowing professionals and meeting models, following them around, getting to know different professional photographers. I had a Nikon D40, but it was destroyed. I would have to buy a bunch of equipment. It would be very expensive to buy expensive equipment. My brother was a in-combat photographer for the military, and photography is definitely in her family, and he has a bachelor's degree in film. And my sister Gina is a graphic designer, which she only make a trickle of money with graphic design, and she sells her kind of stuff online, but there's only a trickle of money with that. You sell your stuff majorly on like Redbubble or Etsy, but you only get a little bit of money with that kind of a job. But yes, she has a bachelor's in graphic design, as well as Lori. They have bachelors in art. I studied photography straight out of high school. I started working at an aquarium, and I got busy engaged. My primary interest was getting married and having a kid. That's not my primary interest and desires, but it went through directions with my health. And my main desire was to work with aquarium animals, because I work at an aquarium and I like sea life. I like sharks and rays, and sea life, lobsters. I like seafood. It's funny because a lot of the people I work with are vegetarians or turn vegetarian, but I like eating seafood. I like clam chowder, especially New England style clam chowder, which is really thick. It's different than the thin stuff. It's not like the canned stuff. And like all that is like the best, including pizza in New England is way better than here. Pizza in New York or anywhere in Times Square is times better than here in San Diego. It's a different kind of pizza. A lot more thick. I like deep dish, but I also like thin crust. I like a variety. I love pizza. My diet has changed. I don't have anorexia like I used to, but I had recovered around that time, and that was a memory of it. And of course, Dad listening always to his music. I think of Joe Cocker and the Beatles. Remember the Magic Christian? That was a weird movie. And Raquel Welch just died. Raquel Welch used to be an anchor woman. Me and my mom are watching. I didn't know she was an anchor woman. My mom told me she started in La Jolla. She's an anchor woman. I didn't know that. And I was just interested because Jim Brown had died, and she was in a movie, The 100 Guns or Gunshots or whatever. What was it? That's an old movie from way back. It was a spaghetti western. This is way back in like the 60s, 70s time. It was with Burt Reynolds, and my grandpa was a huge spaghetti western fan. He liked Bonanza and all those country movies, lots of Western stuff. He would paint a lot, the subjects. And Jim Brown was one of the first black guys to ever be in a Western movie and co-star with a Latina and be in a romance with a different ethnic group, including love scenes, was new. And people have never seen that before, and that was the beginning of everything. My sister Lori's married a black guy, and if they didn't go out there and show that to people, then nobody would follow suit. Everybody would feel like it's wrong to do that, because my grandma, she didn't want to tell Grammy about Kevin. And I remember my mom had pointed on the TV that anchorman looks like Kevin. She said, really? She said, really? Because he's black. Because, yeah, that looks like Kevin. And the grandma said, really? So she kind of knew that she was with a black guy, but you could see a look in her face. She's all like, that was all new to her, because that was all just beginning. That was just the beginnings of things. People weren't used to seeing that. And St. Louis tends to be racist too. And Georgia's definitely, like back in the day, it was just the way it went. And the bathroom rules and all of that, it was really terrible. But, there's a southern kind of couple, Virginia, and it doesn't matter about being religious Christian and all of that. A lot of those people, the churches, the KKK and Ku Klux Klan and all that, built on the Mormon church. The Mormons are real racist. I got to know Mormons when I was younger. Or Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a cult, giving their Watchtower series, and they believe that Jesus was hung on a stick, and that's not even biblically accurate. In Roman times, they used to nail you to a cross. Duh, not hang you. That was the, the Roman rule there. They got that from all the others, like the Babylonians and all that. But different cultures copying each other. Here's my sloth. I used to have a monkey named George, Curious George, and my mom got me this Curious George like during Christmas time. And I liked it. It was during New Year's, actually. It was during New Year's, because I got my Curious George when I was a kid, and I remember I still have it, still with me. But yeah, things have changed. What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you turn and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing your song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, baby, I would a little help from my friends. Oh, I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Whoa, yeah, okay, all right. Joe Cocker played with Janis Joplin. As thin as faded as my jeans, Bobby's on the diesel down just before rain, and rode us all the way to New Orleans. Yeah, that lady. Only number one hit, Bobby McGee, and that was Chris Christopherson that wrote that song. I pulled my harpoon out my dirty red bandana. I was playing soft with Bobby, sang the blues, yeah. Yep. And then there was Rita Coolidge, yeah. And Boz Scaggs. Rita Coolidge, yeah, my dad liked that. Boz Scaggs and Georgia, that song Georgia. And of course, all the other, Ray Charles had Georgia on my mind, but Boz Scaggs had a Georgian guy, football player, tough Marine guy, hard nosed. I hugged him before I left. He was surprised I hugged him, but that was the beginnings of everything. If you could deal with him, you could deal with anybody, like Alexis, who's a meth addict, and we would get into tiffs. I'm not a real physical girl. I don't get into fist fights or anything like that, but that girl's threatened me. I know, because meth burns holes in your brains, but I see the most ridiculous things go on at parks, just blowing domes in the bushes and a bunch of crap I'd see go on, and a lot of it was just terrible from all the drug use. It started younger and then got older, and she actually wanted to go to college. She had dreams to do art in college. My sisters have their bachelors in their art and graphic design, but she went a different direction. Things got all screwy. She actually dated a homeless guy. Well, he went homeless guy for a while, and he was a heroin addict, and he got HIV from the needles and sharing over out in Hillcrest. And he said he didn't even care when he got HIV, that he doesn't care if he spreads it to other people. And he was smoking spice at the time, and spice is really bad for you also. And that really affected me because I had dreams of him and I knew he probably was going to go downhill, and it was Connor. And all that drug use was absolutely horrendous. And Joe Cocker and that group and the Mad Dog and Englishman, I already knew something off about that. And watching the Beatles psychedelic movies as a kid, I knew it was off. I knew there was something intimidating and weird about Leon Russell. He actually married a black woman. He did. He married one of the Sly and the Family Stone. Her name was Mary. Yeah, that's right, Mary. He married a Mary, who's black, and they have a daughter named Tina Rose. Tina Rose. She's a really beautiful black girl who's like, looks like her mom from Sly and the Family Stone. So I'm very music inclined. I got to know a lot of musicians when I was younger. I did photography, and my first boyfriend was a bass player. So, and I still am hanging out there with Mr. Hemmings now, and getting to know musicians, Australian artists, getting to know depression and seeing how depression works, getting to know all of the hummingbirds in the business that made money and still have problems, even though they have money, because money doesn't really buy happiness. But you just got to know God. You got to know, have a relationship with God, and realize that relationships end, fiancés turn on you, people cheat, people break up, people use you for money and for fame and glamour, and money, fame, glamour, yes. And trying to get up there and up the ladder with my sloth George here.